This Watson machine is heavy. You lift no weight, it just feels so heavy. I'm gonna do one more set. I'm just gonna grab another 5.
What are we training for?
Just doing full body. It could be big. So the thing that most people I find have issues with, especially in today's lifestyle, they go too quickly. Before you learn how much to eat, whether that's a deficit or a build, you've got to learn how to eat. You've got to learn the ins and outs of meal timing. And a lot of coaches skip this fundamental part. They give you the perfect plan, yet they actually forget the art of coaching and how to coach with it. Same goes with your training. You need to learn the proper setup, the proper execution. Only when you've done that is when you can start really adding load to it. You can't skip these fundamentals, because if you do, you will get stuck and you won't be able to continue to make long-term progress. Now I'm loading on level 3 today. It's generally the hardest for the pec. One is basically a good balance of pec and tricep. I'm going to put another 20 on here, but other than that, we're trying to load number 3 as heavy as possible today. With the fundamentals of training, there is really a couple of ways to know when to increase the weight, right? So you might have a barbell bench press at 60 kilos for 6 to 8 reps. Now, the beginner way is to go 62.5, 65, 67, 70. The issue is when you start to get really, really strong, and say you're now benching 100 kilos, you might need to use different strategies. And that strategy might be something like 100 for 6 reps, 2 sets, 100 for 7 reps, 1 set. Next week, you might be looking at something like 2 sets of 7 to 8 at 100. As you get closer to that potential failure at the heavier weights, especially when you are lifting heavier, it does get that little bit harder to progress. You can't always just slap a 2.5 on or a 5, and that's where you know you're actually making good progress. Those smaller jumps in reps only make a world of difference. It's a tricky question on what to progress and what to improve, because both ways work really, really well. I think it depends what you want out of the exercise and what kind of phase you're in with your training. You'll probably alter what you are trying to improve on. In terms of muscle mass and strength, the research suggests that adding the same weight, increasing the reps or increasing the weight, are pretty similar. I think it depends on where you're at in your own journey and how close you are to, say, your failure at 2 to 4 reps as opposed to 15 reps. It's going to be different. And what exercise it is as well. Like if you're doing a bench press, it's much different than doing a lateral raise. So you might be able to squeeze out a few more lateral raises, turn them into partial reps. You're not going to be able to do that with bench press. Whether you're doing high reps or low reps, you need to be pushing yourself to a limit where you can create change. There's no right or wrong. For many years, I got caught up in this, high rep hypertrophy camp, and that's what a lot of my mates were doing. That's what a lot of the bodybuilders that I was looking up to were doing. And there's many stories of when Tom Platz used to go train with Arnie, and Tom Platz actually got smaller because Arnie was training twice a day and he just couldn't recover in time, right? So what works for one, and Arnold was the best in the world at the time, so everyone was kind of like, what's he doing? I want to do what he's doing. Genetically, not everyone could do what he was doing. And both of these guys looked great. Some of these guys trained for 45 minutes. Dorian Yates, really, really heavy, moderate reps, low reps. You don't want to do the same thing too often. You want to kind of mix it up a little bit. One of the things I like doing, for example, is if we've done a 12-week block on back squats, I might add in a phase of front squats, an exercise that you don't do often, to see if your strength has actually gone up. We've done this exercise, record the results, go back to our back squatting. 12 weeks later again, it's like, okay, this is what we did get for our front squats. What are we hitting now? It's easy to say you should do push-pull legs or you should do upper, lower. But when I look at the client or look at myself, I'm like, what am I doing right now and what do I need? Some people ask me, what method is this? I wrote it for you. I don't know what the method is. It's targeting your weaknesses. It's going to build you up. It's going to get you stronger. This is how you're going to hit the 140 bench, the 180 squat that you wanted and the 220 deadlift. It's that simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Put some more weight on this. I think at one stage I was squatting, 180 for 4 or 5, or, a decent amount for back then at like 67 kilos. It took me so long to adjust into the high rep hypertrophy phase that I almost forgot what it was like to do really, really heavy lifts and that feeling that you get from doing those really heavy lifts. Recently, I've kind of kept in a bit of high rep stuff. I do some low rep stuff, and it might look like 2 strength days, 3 hypertrophy days, whole body training for me right now. And I find that works really well because you're still hitting some heavy lifts, but you're still doing the fun stuff, which I truly believe is fun, where you're doing the really high rep stuff. Again, there's no right or wrong, and that's what we're talking about here with the art of coaching. I don't think there is a right or the wrong. Some people say protein powders are great, but dairy is a commonality. Right now I'm doing 4 whole body days of, as you can tell, I've stopped the big leg training. I can't do it with all the jiu-jitsu, I just get hammered. And for me right now, it's just a matter of being at a healthy weight, being able to have really good movement, still have abs, you know, and all I'm doing is just building the program around some compound lifts. I'm still trying to learn what is the best way to do sometimes 2 training sessions a day with some high intensity cardio and stay as strong as possible. Seems to be the most challenging thing. I guess you would call it a blend between bodybuilding and powerlifting. And basically I've just been doing this style of programming for 6 weeks. Today's a little bit of a higher rep day. I'm doing 1 set to failure. I'm doing pec deck. I did the neutral grip press. I'm gonna do some lateral raises, some prone grip lat pull down with a straight bar. I'm gonna do some T-bar rows and finish with some leg extension, leg curl. And that's kind of the general gist of my days now. They kind of look like this. I do a heavy bench, heavy back, posterior chain focus day. And this is kind of like what I call the fun, easy day on the weekend, which is nice. You know, I still prefer to do the building blocks with clients when they come into the doors. Like, nothing's really changed with my training. I still love the hardcore bodybuilding stuff. And if I wasn't doing the cardio, I would still be training, you know, hard arm days, hard leg days, you know, the bit more of the bodybuilder splits. But for the people that come in and they want to start training with us, we design the program around them. And probably where I've changed the most is a lot of my programs used to be very quad dominant. They're a lot more posterior chain focused now. And that typically just helps with the glute and core. And I feel like that sets their foundation up for greater success. So when they do come on to, you know, heavy pendulum squats or heavy barbell squats, they just have so much more power. But yeah, I start with the unstable movements. I try not to start people in like a leg press as opposed to like dumbbell squats, because there's so much that can go wrong with the dumbbell squats. You know, their upper back can round, their ankle mobility, hip mobility can all come into play, which can be masked quite easily with things like the leg press. So I'd rather start with a little bit more of the unstable stuff, let the joints prep a little bit, finish off with some like high rep leg press when things are fatigued. And then from there, it's just about what do they need and what do they want. You know, I got one guy that has done an arm specialization phase for the last 4 phases and loves it. And I kind of like it too, it's fun. As a coach, I kind of want the person that I'm training to do the same as what I do. I'm about to do a set, but one of the biggest things that I want them to do is just ask questions. The more questions I can ask them, the more questions they can ask me, the better we can define and make these changes more optimal. In a way, if they do want some sort of elite level result, it's definitely to do with process, and the more that you and me can be open, the better the progress is going to be. So that's probably the most important thing. Asking questions. I think it's hugely underrated. A lot of people almost think it's annoying to ask questions. It's not annoying, it's needed. It's 100% needed. Hit some lateral raises. Second thing is just giving details. It's similar to asking questions, but I want to know everything. And the points kind of tie in, but it's what's needed when coaching. You've got to ask questions to get better educated. You've got to give more details. There's no point in me giving you a program or helping you with nutrition if you don't understand the why, because what's going to happen if I'm not here or you go away? You're just going to fall back into those bad habits that, you know, led you to yo-yo dieting or leading you to have a lot less muscle mass. Just going to hit some heavy laterals here with these big 7.5s. Those laterals are heavy. I've always found you don't need to go too heavy with them. And the third thing that I really like to emphasize on with the client-coach relationship is, for me and the client, I want feedback. I need to accept this feedback and use it to become better. A lot of times I got feedback in the past and I was like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. At the end of the day, when you get feedback, now I got to take it on board, step back, think about it, and put in an action plan to become better. Same thing with my clients, right? If I'm giving them feedback, it's not because I dislike them or I want to see them struggle or suffer a little bit. It's for the greater good, right? And it's what's going to make them into a champion almost. Most of this stuff regarding feedback is usually about habits anyway. If you look at like elite athletes, they're the ones with the best habits, really. The bodybuilders, for example, they build their day around their training. I guess it's all about being honest, right? You want to be honest with yourself, right? If you can't be honest with yourself, you're not going to be able to continue making those improvements. So when taking on feedback, it's more about breaking down those walls that have stopped you from being where you want to be. I find with lateral raises, a lot of people just start swinging the shoulders. Here I'm slightly leaning forward. I prefer seated variation now because it keeps me more strict in the movement. I don't want to use any hip movement. And the problem is when you do this, it does hurt your ego a little bit because 7.5s, 10s, they're heavy. Yo, you. Are you doing some heavy hip thrusts? Good, we're going to film a set of them. The other thing is that I do want you to start focusing on only what you can control. There's so many variables out there. There's so many things out of your control. And the things that you can control, things like your attitude, what you eat, they're the 1%ers. They add up over time. Need to grab a drink, it's so bloody hot in here. Don't tell anyone the secret, all right? 60 grams creatine. Don't tell anyone. I think the biggest thing that people disregard is anything worth having takes a long time to build. And I think the first 6 months of your journey is the most important. If you can focus on doing the foundations with everything and creating those habitual changes, you will get the best result. If you try and skip over them and try and rush into, you know, the latest bodybuilding program, you are going to burn out and you are going to get injured. And then you're going to hate the gym. The goal for you should be to be training 365 days a year, not 200 or not 150 because you're burnt out, injured, stressed. This should complement your lifestyle. This should be making your lifestyle better, not worse. And I'm telling you, the results will happen. You will start to look better, you will start to feel better, you will lose those notches on those jeans, it will come. And most people are generally good at one. Their training is awesome, their nutrition is horrible. Their nutrition is all right, but they lack training intensity. And this is where having a coach sometimes comes in handy, or has come in handy with me before. Because sometimes you need someone to tell you that you're training shit, or you know, you can push further than what you think. That's the biggest thing. I think it's the person and their limiting beliefs that's holding them back. I reckon you can put another 2 on there. You see, some people, they talk the talk, they say they're going to do this, they say they're going to do this. Some people just do actions. They're usually the quietest people in the room that just get stuff done. Like Scotty over here. Doesn't showboat, doesn't make noise, just comes in, gets it done. Horrible. A true transformation isn't how someone looks, it's how they present themselves, it's how they deal with themselves when things are going wrong. It's how you hear the change in their mindset from maybe a victim in one way to a leader in other ways, that someone who blended into the crowd who is now a leader. And Scotty's a great example of that, right? Like the guy that was just doing the hip thrusts. You know, when he first came here, he had a good training background, but when he really dialed in, you know, people started going, I want to do what that guy's doing. What are his macros? What's his training plan? I can give you that. You're not going to get the result that he has got because you haven't done the inner work and created the change that he has created.
Beyond rest?
Beyond rest is just along there.
I thought it was this side of the road, so I wasn't even looking over there.
Yeah, no, that's all right, just over there.
Yeah.
Did I say 10 or 11?
I said 10, but I'm 10 minutes late. The baby's fine. Like,
okay.
Everything's fine. You stay.
Oh, do you want to get interviewed as well? Come on. You can talk about your experience.
Not like right after I had a baby.
You've just had a baby, you can talk about your experience. It'll be fun. Well, there's plenty.
And when I had bigger quads than you.
How about just a beautiful look? Just a beautiful headshot.
What do I say?
Just whatever you want. You know when we made that buggy? Maybe we'll put that in at the bottom.